Dear family, as we listen to this story, it's very reminiscent of a story that we're going to hear in just about 2 weeks, isn't that correct? Only it is Jesus who will be raised. Now, this particular Sunday, as I've mentioned each time I've come to speak with you and to be with you, is that there's a central issue at stake. And of course, there are several of them, especially in the gospel like this. And the one I want to share with you as you see practice here, and that's the word and the practice of mercy. Do you believe that you have a good understanding of what mercy is? Do I have a second on that? Do you think you have? How about if I help you a little bit? Would that be helpful? Mercy is a very important issue for us because of this. When someone does something against us, what is it that we want to do? We want to pay them back. Isn't that the case? The example I always use is that, remember in the old days, only you, those of you who are my age, I don't think they do this in school anymore, but homework you had to go up and get it from the teacher. She would make a lovely comment or not. I never received a lovely comment. So, do you know what I mean? We'd go up and get the paper and come back. Well, while the teacher wasn't looking, somebody would slap you on the back. And you know when you're caught by surprise, that stings. You know, so what happens first? When that free time comes this afternoon, I'm going to pay him back. We know that feeling. But what mercy says something altogether different. That whatever the anger, whatever the difficulty, what we want to do is to stop the circle of violence. And when we do that, that's called mercy. We stop the circle of violence. Now, there are going to be times when there are difficulties in school, a place of work, or whatever, when we're going to have to use a system to work out what the problems are. And we know that in factories and so forth, we have the unions together with management, and they get together and they have their meetings and they begin to work things out, and hopefully in a just and merciful way. But you understand that mercy is telling us it requires a process. And that process is not about vengeance, about paying the person back. It's about making a wrong happening a better happening. Are we clear about that? So we're seeking that with his just. Now, you remember the story about the young man who takes the father's money and goes off and lives this life. And then when he comes back, how does his father treat him? He treats him with mercy. But there's more to that story than what we just see. Because what happens with that treatment of mercy, he saw in his son a changed person. The old term, those of us who were, excuse me, from back in the 70s and 80s, remember maybe the term metanoia. And that means a deep change in life. That's what happened to that young man as he come back. His father could see that this young man had really changed his way. And when I talk about the process in the workplace, the issue too is when a wrong is righted, it means the choice as you go forward to make the right decisions, that which is just, and in cases that which is merciful. That's what we're after. We want to be able to live together in such a manner because we are people who are not perfect. We live together in such a manner that we learn how to forgive one another. And that's at the heart of this season. But also we have to go further than that and deeper into that. The one who is asking for forgiveness also has to change his or her life. Do you understand what I'm talking about here? So it isn't the cause for mercy, but the person that you're dealing with is sincerely sorry for whatever's going on, and you're going to now make a new life as you go forward. Any parent here knows that you have to do this several times with your children through the years. Now, when I was younger, I didn't have to do it once because I was so good. That isn't even close to what is truth. So this negotiation process I've been in many times. But there's a little bit of hook in this one that we have to look at when we're talking about being merciful. If we've settled whatever the problem is, it does not mean that somehow, if we're talking about adults, that I am financially then responsible for that person. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So the basis of my forgiving does not automatically include that there is going to be some kind of financial settlement. Is it clear what I'm talking about here? Because the person who is in the difficulty could say, the only way I know that you have forgiven me is when you give me more money. Do you get that? Do you get that?
Yes.
All right, dearest family. When we do this kind of negotiation, when we do it, that's why the church talks to us about going to Mass, a habit of prayer, choosing to do one loving act after another. All of this prepares us to look at situations like I'm talking about and to process them in a merciful and Christ-like way. Is that clear to you what I'm talking about here? So what we're doing right now, today, with each other, is strengthening our ability to be able to be merciful in the fullest sense of what that means, and to understand that there are difficulties there. And one of the difficulties is when we're hurt, we want to strike back. And this says, I am not going to continue this circle of violence. I'm going to stop it here and make choices that are good and healthy, both for myself and whatever decision is involved with the loved one with whom we are now in some kind of difficulty. Dearest family, this is not easy stuff, and any of you, and I'm sure all of you here, have been involved in one of these things or another. But it's important for us to understand that we are not perfect. And so work to be prepared as we go forward to know that these things are going to occur from time to time, and that we ask the Lord to help us to be persons who know how to dispense mercy like Jesus did. And what does that mercy look like? The person who was on the cross with Jesus, we call the good thief. What does he say? Today you will be with me in paradise. It is that gift, it is that sense that we want to have involved in all the decisions we make that affect the lives of others, so that what happens, though stinging, though painful, can be a cause for new growth and new life. And that's what this season is about, new growth and new life. And we ask today that you and I learn how to be merciful persons, and that mercy helps us to treat that other person as a human being. Now, we've gone over this before. This is my last example. And it has to do with the way we drive. Somehow, when our people get behind the wheel, their Catholicity somehow stays back home. And I've watched this over my period of time here. I purposely let other people drive to watch what happens. And the person who drives me acts as if he or she is the paragon of driving, that they're the best out there. And I hear all kinds of language that is not fit to be talked here, and actually it shouldn't even be in your mouth. Do you know what I'm talking about here? You know what happens in those situations? Is that we think we can suspend being merciful. Think of this. That person in front of us may be a grandfather who has a grandson who is ill, and he's going to his daughter's house to give her a break and to help her out. We don't know that. But what is our attitude? The dirty rat cut right in front of us. And so I want him to hurt. I want him to hurt. And the other thing that goes on, we've gone through this, you hurry up, they pass me up, and when we get up to the light, I'm right aside of them. And I didn't do any of those things. Sometimes I look at them and say, God loves you. No one has ever said that back. So I'm thinking people who are not members of St. Peter's Parish don't practice that. So, do you get what I mean here? There's no suspension, because you know what happens when we do it in those little ways? It erodes. And first thing you know, we're responding that way to our spouse, we're responding that way to our children, to the people at work, and it goes on. And that's what the Lord is challenging us. Look at your ability to be merciful and understand that there are times in your life when you also need mercy. How do you want to be treated? And you dispense that mercy in the same way. You want it to be loving. You want it to be done in such a way that is healthful and growthful for you, not to punish somebody or to revenge, make it a revenge action. We want to be persons who are merciful. And I tell you, we can demonstrate this daily in the small acts that we do, especially when we're driving the car.